Hello, this is a synopsis of A Rose by Any Other Name, The Necessity of Background Checks. I selected this article for a couple of reasons. One, because my name is Rose and I thought it was interesting, but also because I worked for a nonprofit for several years that went from not doing background checks to doing them, and in the interim realized that we had some people with some pretty shady past working for us, but only ran the background checks on them after they'd been there for a couple of years, which I find kind of interesting. The article involves a case study of a woman named Rose Smith. She was a divorced soccer mom with 3 young children and worked for a small town as a vault teller in the foothills of North Carolina for several years. She was very well liked by her fellow workers and by customers alike. She was very pleasant to be around and hardworking. It turned out that she had pilfered $50,000 in small amounts over a 2-year period. The FBI charged her with embezzlement. The trial was to start in 6 to 7 months. With a family to feed and support, she went looking in search of other work. The Stone Mountain Christmas Tree Coalition is based in the high mountains of North Carolina. It's a coalition comprised of 12-plus individual tree businesses. It's very successful, selling 250,000 trees each year, tens of thousands to large chains such as Walmart and Kmart, and hundreds more to small independent retailers, churches, schools, scouting groups, not-for-profits, and entrepreneurs. They employ 400-plus staff, of which approximately 325 were seasonal, just in the fall to actually cut down the trees and get them ready for sale. And many seasonal staff are from Mexico and Central America. They have no bank accounts. They're paid in cash. The foreman would oversee groups of 20 or 30 seasonal staff and report hours to payroll, who prepared cash envelopes for distribution. The coalition found themselves in need of a lead payroll person and put out an advertisement. Rose applied for the position and provided false references and previous employment history. The coalition did no background or reference check and hired Rose. Rose quickly realized the company had no internal controls. She created a fake seasonal employee in her maiden name and wrote checks totaling $135,000 to herself. Since payroll also prepared the cash envelopes for distribution to the seasonal workers, she created additional fake employees by creating false applications that she never sent to the personnel office, and set cash envelopes aside to take home each pay period. The CEO of the coalition, Rob Norris, who was hired into his position 3 months prior to when Rose was hired, had a degree in forestry and had also taken some accounting classes. When he reviewed the financial statements prepared by Barry Holder, something seemed off. Payroll expenses were unreasonably high compared to prior periods. Barry Holder, the CPA and certified internal auditor, worked just part-time for the coalition and full-time for a large furniture manufacturer in North Carolina. He ran calculations of a number of employees and expected wages and agreed that there was reasonable possibility of payroll expense overstatement. Since Barry agreed with Rob that something was suspicious, he went to the personnel office to review Rose's application. He found that no background or reference check had been done, and that they had just assumed that the references were reliable. Barry called the references and found them to not be legitimate. He did additional free internet searches, and it revealed that Rose Smith and Rose Martin were likely the same person, her maiden and married names, and that Rose was due soon in court on federal embezzlement charges. A comparison of personnel authorized employees to payroll registered employees revealed 3 additional fictitious employees who were being paid in cash. Barry recalled the fraud triangle that was part of his internal audit training, and all seemed to apply to the situation. Rose had ample opportunity, being the head of payroll, to create fictitious employees. She may have rationalized that what she was doing is okay because she had been fired from her last job and was having a hard time supporting her family, and maybe felt that she was entitled to the money, and the pressure of having that family to support and no longer having the salary she made at the bank would make up the fraud triangle. Barry and Rob brought this information to the local sheriff, who passed it on to the district attorney, and Rose was once again arrested and awaited court dates in a second matter. Since the coalition was hoping to never have this happen again, Rob asked Barry for some advice. Barry explained the need for controls in personnel and payroll, and for an ongoing risk assessment. Background checks are needed for personnel in inherently risky areas such as accounting, finance, and particularly payroll, since cash payments were involved. But not for the seasonal laborers. It would be too expensive and too much time to run background checks for so many of those extra employees. Running a background check is a necessary audit procedure. It should be part of the firm's quality control. It should be monitored by someone independent of the function, such as an internal auditor. What is contained in a background check can vary greatly, from a simple Social Security verification to a detailed history and acquaintance list. Some employers even review social media profiles, such as Facebook, of potential candidates to see who it is that they're hiring. The internal auditor, Barry, made suggestions of some potential sources of background data: driving records, vehicle registration, credit records, criminal records, Social Security numbers, education records, court records, workers' compensation records, bankruptcy records, character references, neighbor interviews, medical records, property ownership records, military records, state licensing records, drug test records, past employer checks, personal references, incarceration records, and sex offender lists. I put a note down the bottom that I would be leery about using some of these sources, such as the medical records, since this would probably be a violation of HIPAA laws. There's a law called the Fair Credit Reporting Act that sets national standards for employment screening. The law only applies to background checks performed by an outside company called a consumer reporting agency. It doesn't apply to in-house background checks. Employers may legally ask an applicant if they have ever been arrested, for example. According to the FCRA, the following cannot be reported: bankruptcies after 10 years, civil suits, civil judgments, and records of arrest from date of entry after 7 years, paid tax liens after 7 years, accounts placed for collection after 7 years, and any other negative information except criminal convictions after 7 years. This does not apply to jobs with an annual salary of $75,000 or more per year. There were some recent changes to the FCRA. Recently, criminal convictions became reportable indefinitely. Though arrest records are public records, an employer cannot ask sources for this data. If convicted or out of jail pending trial, that info can be used. In California, criminal history rap sheets compiled by law enforcement can only be accessed by a select group of agencies: public utilities, law enforcement, security guard firms, and child care facilities. Of course, this doesn't keep private companies from compiling the same data. It's good to be skeptical when reviewing background materials. Information may not be accurate or up to date. Negative information shouldn't be taken at face value. It should be verified against actual public records filed at a courthouse. And former employers may only be willing to confirm dates of employment, final salary, and very little additional information out of fear of legal action, so they may be a poor source of information.